Here's another argument. He will if she will, he won't, therefore she won't. Now what's the logic of this argument? The logic is, if she will, then he will. He won't, therefore she won't. To set up a truth table, we got he will and she will. We're going to need one for he won't and she won't. And then we're going to need one for the entire argument. Well, first we need one for the premise. If she will, he will. Then we put everything together. If she will, he will, and he won't, then she won't. Okay, there are only 4 lines in this table. Okay, so for the not he, we just negate the he's, and that's a false. And give me some white out here. Okay. Okay, I guess that looks enough like an F to get the message across. Let's try again. Okay, so false, false, true, true negates the true, true, false, false column. And negating the true, false, gives us a false, true column. Okay, if S, then H. Well, we look for cases where H is false and S is true. That'll make it false. Every other case, we don't have that. Now, using the shorthand that we've seen before, I'm going to evaluate the and here. Okay, we're looking at if she will, then he will, and that he won't. And that's got to be a conjunction. They both got to be true, so we see that one's false here, one's false here, one's false here, and they're both true here. The only case where this thing is true is the last case. Now, to evaluate the implication, we're going to look at the premise, which is right here, and the conclusion, which is in this column, and see where the conclusion is false, and see if the premise is also, if the premise might be true. Well, conclusion's false here, but the premise is false. Conclusion's true here, but the premise is false. That doesn't hurt anything. 2 falses don't hurt anything, and 2 trues are what we'd hope to see. So in every case, that conditional is true. So again, everything's true, and the argument is valid. Now we can contrast that with this argument. He will if she will, she won't, therefore he won't. What does the truth table for this argument look like? Well, it's very similar to the other one, except that our second premise is she won't. So, well, let's keep this on here. So let's say he will if she will. Well, that's the same thing we had before. She won't, therefore he won't. Now here's our truth table set up in a very similar way to what we had before, with just this slight change. We're going to just do this. No explanation this time. We've seen this a number of times, so we don't really need to go through it at this point. Okay, now if she, then he. So we got to look at the she, then he. Just as we did before, we find that that's false in the third line, otherwise true. Then we evaluate this and. Looking at the if she, then he, and at the not she line. Okay, false here, true here, false here, not true here, I'm sorry. Let's get the white out again. And what do we have? Okay, evaluating the conditional now, evaluating that in this column here. We're looking for where the premise is true and the conclusion is false. Okay, so the premise is right here, the conclusion is in the not he column, and let's see, the premise is only true once, but look here, the conclusion is false. In other cases, everything is right, everything comes out true, but in this one case, we see that there's a false. So that the argument is not always true, that is, there are conditions where we can see that the argument is not true. So therefore, the argument is invalid. Okay? This one false here makes the whole argument invalid.